Guys, good morning. Happy coffee talk. Definitely on the up and up still. Feeling better. Yesterday was a really good day because I was able to function at like at least talking my normal speed. Not activity level yet. I did do like a mile walk and that felt like plenty. So today is another good day. And if you're like, what are you talking about, Christy? I was sick earlier this week, ended up in the hospital. Who knows why? But I'm feeling much better. And so, yeah, coffee this morning. So again, if you're new to Coffee Talk, welcome. This podcast is, 10 to 15 minutes long, pretty much most days, in the week. And I always start Coffee Talk with just telling you what I'm drinking and what mug I'm drinking out of because I enjoy it. Really, this whole podcast is just to kind of give you something to think about, a perspective shift, something that you can use in your day, like a little actionable thing that should help you. And if you and I were sitting on the porch together having coffee this morning, I would tell you about my mug. I would be like, hey, I got this mug at this place and I love it. Or like, hey, we're drinking Black Rifle coffee. And I imagine this podcast as literally us sitting together on the porch, just talking and sharing, what's in my head and like letting you think about it and share back with me. So that's what this is if you're new. So welcome. And this is my mug this morning, this really cool like raccoon mug with it's Native American art. It's really beautiful. And I got this actually in Florida, which makes no sense because it's a Washington State artist. But I love it. And I love the size of this mug. That's the other thing about mugs is like the size matters. Sometimes you want really big, sometimes you want really small. This one's like right in the middle, just right for today. And I'm drinking Black Rifle coffee. P.S. I don't collect anything in my life. I'm like anti-tchotchke collecting except for mugs. I've got so many mugs that I give them away as presents to people that I love because I'm like, I love this and now I'm going to share it with you. So diving in to our coffee talk topic for today, it's about staying in the status quo. Habits, how do we change our habits? That's like the thing, the buzzword. If you haven't ever listened to, or read James Clear's Atomic Habits, it's a great book. It's how do you change your habits? Everybody online who is in that's the space of helping you create change talks about, how do you create sustainable habit change? I mean, that's me, right? Like I talked to you about that. I talked to you about showing up consistently and building it into your life and like creating boundaries and all that good stuff. Like we talk about that all the time as it relates to eating better, moving more, taking better care of yourself. But what I wanted to bring up today was the temptation of the status quo. And when we think about changes that we want to make, like if you want to make a change to your lifestyle, say you're not exercising at all right now and you're like, I would like to start exercising again, or I used to exercise and I really need to get back to it. That is a really common thing. Okay. So your daily routine right now are essentially your habits, especially if you continue to like repeat those. You have a pretty typical routine, right? Your day is filled with something. And then in order for you to start going to the gym again, which is what you want, that's the change you want. You don't just want to go one time, you want to go all the time. You need to create a new habit of going to the gym, right? Yep. I think we're like on the same page as that. And so then there's all these strategies. Well, how do we create that new habit? When we put it in our calendar, we get an accountability buddy, we pick something that's convenient and doable. We give ourselves triggers. Like there's all these little things that we can do that I've probably shared with you in different ways on how to create that new habit. But the one thing that I don't think I've talked about enough, and the one that could potentially be the reason why it never happens, is the attractiveness of the status quo. So whatever you're doing right now is your status quo. So it is your setting, your default setting for right now. And changing it tends to have pain points, resistance, things that are not fun. Maybe it's a conversation you have to have with your boss in order to leave on time so that you can actually go to that class. Maybe it's a conversation you need to have with your partner or your spouse so that you can pay for the gym so that you can go to. Maybe it's physical discomfort of exercising when your body hasn't exercised in a long time. And it's easier not to. It is easier not to have the conversation with your boss and just keep staying late. It's easier to not have the conversation with your partner or your spouse because then you don't have to talk about money. It's easier to not have to start exercising again and have sore muscles when you can just not have sore muscles by not exercising. It's in fact not just, default setting. It's attractive to stay in the status quo because there are literally discomforts of change. There are resistance, things that push against you when you think about changing the status quo. And then we're not even talking about like the ones that are associated with people pleasers. If you're a people pleaser, not only do you have a reliance on the status quo because you've already accommodated different people in your life to be able to facilitate their needs, but also you care about disrupting other people's status quo. Let's be real. You don't want to rock the boat. So you don't want to rock the boat and be a thing. That's another resistance and reason to stay in the status quo. Maybe you also have a fear of changing people's expectations of you. Maybe you have a reputation for being this like super reliable person who's always willing to stay late at work, who always saves the day. You get praised for it. People like that about you. They tell you that. They're like, you're the best. Thank you so much. Like, there's nobody here I can rely on, but I can rely on you. And now we're talking about you changing those expectations in order for you to do something that you want to do. So now you're going to disappoint people in your mind when you change the status quo. So the status quo, and in this example, we're using exercise and creating that new routine, isn't just like, oh, I'm too lazy to make change. Oh no, the status quo is easier. It is 100% less painful to stay exactly the way you are, to not have the conversation with your boss, to not spend the money, to not have the physical discomfort, to not change people's expectations of you, to not have conversations, to not any of it. It is easier to stay exactly where you are, which is why we do that. It's not because we don't want to do the change. It's because it's actually easier to stay in the status quo than to disrupt anything. So then how do we actually finally decide to make change and go ahead and deal with the discomfort? What is it that finally says, you know what, it doesn't matter. I'm done, right? I'm done. I'm going to have that conversation. I'm done. I'm going to, spend the money. I'm done. I'm going to go ahead and feel the pain because I need to make change. Why? What is it that finally triggers that? Usually, it's that the status quo is creating some sort of outcome. So whatever you do every day creates an outcome. That's just a given. That's one of my favorite things in FitMe is to explain that to people. It's what you do every day that counts. It's not what you do sometimes. So whatever your status quo is creating an outcome right now. Maybe that the outcome is some of those things are positive. Maybe you're going to get a promotion at work. Maybe you're making money. Maybe you have a really stressed out life and you never see your family. Maybe it's everything's hunky-dory in this one category. Or maybe you're like, the outcome that my current life is producing, not exercising, is producing this outcome of weight gain, of my body feeling tired, of having no energy, of not feeling good in my clothes, of a physical body that is not being taken care of. That is the outcome of my current status quo. So when will you actually do anything about it? You're going to do something about it. And I didn't come up with this, by the way. Like, this is just something that I've learned. You are going to finally change when the pain of, a body that doesn't feel good is finally worse than the pain that you're facing with disrupting your status quo. When you're like, I would rather feel this pain and disrupt the status quo than feel this pain and feel miserable in my body, or have my body be weak, or have my body be unhealthy, or whatever. And until that shift, it will be difficult for you to change the status quo. Because there's so much pain and there's so much resistance. There's so much discomfort in it. There's nothing wrong with you that you've stayed the same, that you haven't made changes. That is very human of you to avoid the discomfort of change. So if you actually really truly want to see the change happen, you have to first understand the consequences and outcomes of your status quo. Honestly ask yourself, if the things that you are doing every day, what is it that's producing in your life? What outcome, what result, what future is that producing? And this can be applied to anything, by the way, not just exercise. I hope that you know that you can apply this to relationships, business, nutrition, everything that under the sun. The things that you're doing every day, what is it that is creating in your life? What outcomes, what results, what consequences? First, decide what those are. Think about it. Play it out. If I keep doing what I'm doing for the next 5, 10, 15, 20 weeks, 20 months, 20 years, where does that take me? Is that where I want to be? Ask yourself that question, number one. Okay, so now that you have clarity around what your current default setting, your status quo, what is it producing in your life? Ask yourself, is that what you want? And is it so much not what you want? If the answer is no, that's not what I want. Is it so much not what you want that you are willing to make changes? Decide that. Play that scenario out and say, you know what? That outcome, I can't handle it. It's not acceptable to me. Because now everything about the resistance side of changing your status quo will become less difficult to change. Because all of a sudden, having the conversation with your boss about leaving on time so that you can go to the gym, you've played out the scenario in your mind of what that looks like if you don't do it. Maybe it looks like weight gain. Maybe it looks like unhappiness. Maybe it looks like joint injuries. Maybe it looks like surgery, whatever. You've played that out and you know this is the consequence of me not doing it. And so now that conversation with your boss just feels a little less hard. I'm not saying it's not going to be easy, but now you're entering it with a completely different frame because you are owning the choice and you are proactively choosing to change your status quo. Maybe you decide to spend money on a coach or on a personal trainer or on a gym for the very first time. And you know that it's going to cost you money. Maybe it's going to cost you $300 or $400 a month. And you're like, I cannot believe I'm going to spend that. But you've played out the scenario in which you do nothing. You have no help. You have no direction. You learn nothing about how to take care of your body. You've played that out and you were like, that is unacceptable to me. Now, it doesn't seem so expensive because the investment that you're making in taking care of yourself, $1,000, $2,000, $3,000, whatever, $50,000, all of a sudden you can weigh that against, am I going to be miserable in my body forever? I'm not willing to do that. And so then it feels less hard. Is it still a trade-off and a sacrifice and potentially uncomfortable? Yep. But it's not impossible anymore. But the key isn't just to like willpower yourself through changing your status quo. And that's the takeaway I want you to get from this coffee talk. The changing the status quo, there's nothing wrong with you. It is human and easier to want to stay the same, to not rock the boat, to not change people's expectations, to not do any of that. But if you start to consider what are the outcomes, results, consequences of what you're currently doing and play it out and ask yourself, is that what you want? Is the way that you feel right now played out over the future acceptable to you? And if that pain is more than the pain of change, then make the change. And all of a sudden, because you've done that mental exercise, you will be in a different place. You will be able to do it. You'll be able to stick to it. You will understand why you're doing it. and you will have a completely different mindset around it. This is the ticket. So hopefully this was helpful. This coffee talk is one that I've thought about for a long time, and hopefully, I just woke up this morning and it was on my mind, but on the other hand, this is a real deal thing. And hopefully this was helpful for you. So if you liked this episode, I want to ask a huge favor. So Coffee Talk doesn't have sponsors or anything like that. So the only way that people find out about this podcast is if you share it or tell them. And so do me a huge favor, screen capture this episode on your phone and then share it on your Instagram story and tag me and tell people why it hit. To be honest, you can share things and people will be like, oh, cool. But if you're hey, this episode hit for me because, then all of a sudden, you're going to be able to help somebody else because they'll listen to it and be like, okay, I needed that too. And so that would mean a ton to me if you would do that. So please, if you like this episode, screen capture it, share it, tag me, and then I'll share it on my story and tag you back. And it'll be like we sat together on the porch and had this conversation. So thanks for plugging into Coffee Talk. If you haven't done so, subscribe to FitMe Coffee Talk on your favorite podcast platform. And if you're not a part of our Facebook group yet, then go to Facebook, search FitMe Community, request to join the group, and I'll approve you. This is the one place you do want to be on Facebook because it is a place you can start to make these changes in a community of people like you who want to do it the real way, who want to start to take better care of themselves, who don't want to treat themselves like shit, who don't want to continue to perpetually diet. That's what that community is, and you can be a part of it and just put your toe in the water. See what you think. So thanks for plugging in. I will talk to you guys later. Take care. Bye.